Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Given Podcast, episode 21. We are interviewing Richard from Richie Nankz Knivez, everything to do with knife making and deer stalking and how he got into where he is today. It's been a while since we recorded a podcast. I apologise for that. It's been an absolutely mental time, juggling normal work as well as a busy stag season. Anybody that follows my social media feed will have seen just how all the stags we've taken and what we've been up to on the hill. We're now well into the hinds, but I'm not going to bore you for too long with a big long introduction. This podcast actually recording was over 2 hours, so we will get straight on with it, and there'll be some news update podcasts to follow later on. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Given Podcast. Today we've got Richie Nankz Knivez with us. Hello, Richie.
Hello, Peter. How you doing, mate?
I'm
you for
good.
having me.
Good. So, I think you've just got back in from stalking. So I think we've all been a bit rushed to get this one sorted, and it's taken a while to actually manage to pin each other down to actually record this podcast. So, welcome to the cast.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. So as a little introduction, who am I? So I'm a 40-year-old retired military lad. Very passionate about my military career. Never hid behind it. I had a fantastic career. So served in multiple tours of Afghanistan, Iraq, Northern Ireland, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland again, and then out to Norway. 25-ish years of service and spent 14 years deployed.
Right. Okay.
So that's a little bit about me, but obviously that's my history.
Well, the go-to question is obviously there's that, but let's wind it back a bit.
Yeah.
Because obviously the main question I always ask everybody is, we'll come back round again, but basically the question is, how did you get into shooting?
Yeah. So shooting. So I grew up obviously where I live. I'm situated down in the deep, dark parts of Cornwall. Very rural landscape. Both uncles always had beating dogs, always out picking up, made to walk through rhododendrons and cut your own path type sketch at the start of the season. You acted like a Labrador or a well-trained spaniel at an early age. Grew into air rifle shooting rabbits and squirrels and my next door's pigeons, who had a pigeon lotment. Then I suppose I turned 16 and I joined the military. So I joined the military very early. Right. And to the deer's demise, I then became very good at shooting.
I was going to say, was it the shooting before or the military that actually helped you get the shooting better?
Yeah, definitely the training side of being in the military helped me adapt into deer stalking world. Bearing in mind, I joined the military at 16. You're not allowed an FAC until you're 18. Yeah. So I already had 2 years of centerfire rifle shooting under my belt. Then I think it was like 2004. I think I applied for my FAC,
right?
Something like that. I think it was something like that, maybe even a little bit earlier. And I was fully granted. It was like, well, if you can do it at work, we're not really in any position to say you can't do it here. Okay. Which is fantastic, you know.
But I suppose back in 2004 anyway, things were a bit different. Trying to get hold of an FAC, there was possibly slightly less restrictions on it than they're putting on it sort of nowadays, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. I think the only restriction I had was because I deployed quite a lot. My rifle and shotgun was kept at my uncle's house, who also had an FAC and a shotgun certificate, and we had a dual register. We were dual registered with each other,
right?
Which he did very well out of it, because I had a load of excess money, no mortgage, no nothing like that. I had state of the art kit, and he was like, "You keep buying it, I'll use it." So it was.
So he definitely got the better end of the deal at
He
that one.
definitely got the better end of the stick. So yeah. But you're right. I think that was the only kind of little restriction, and it was because like I would deploy for 6 months or something like that, and they'd be like, "Well, at least your firearms are actually being cared for as such."
Yeah, they were kind of locked away and secure, and there was always somebody there rather than just locked in an empty property kind of thing.
That's it, yeah. But in the military, you do have I have deployed before. I've moved all of my rifles and shotguns into the camp's armory,
Yeah.
and just notified Devon and Cornwall and said, "There's my kit. It's now in this lockup." And they're like, "Yeah, thank you ever so much for letting us know."
Yeah. Nice and simple. And to be honest, military armories, once you put it in there, that's it. It's not coming out of there by anybody else.
Getting them out is the hardest bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that obviously leads us on. So you carried on with your military career, but
Yeah.
were you shooting outside of that, or was it only when you were back home and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would have my leave, and I lived a bit of a different lifestyle because I was based in like the Taunton areas quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was never too far away from where I lived, but I was never kind of home on my doorstep, if you know what
Yeah.
I mean. Which leads me on. I was based at Barnstable for like four to 5 years. And I became really, really good friends with a bloke called Ryan Brentnell, who lives in Oakhampton, which is about 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
And the nights I would stay there, I would go out foxing till like 3 a.m, and we'd be out, and he'd have to go to college because he's a bit younger than me. I'd be in camp for like 8 o'clock the next morning, bags under my eyes, but out shooting where most lads are out drinking and whatnot like that. I was out shooting, deer stalking, foxing, lamping, X, Y, and Z.
Having shot around Taunton and places like that, it's a fantastic bit of landscape, and there's so much to go on.
Oh yeah, I mean, I actually acquired quite a bit of ground around the camps that I was based around, purely because I would be like, I'm here all weekend. I'm a camp orphan. I'm not going home. Can I just walk around your farm? And they're like, "Mate, you shoot what you want. I don't really care." But it's a very different world that we live in now.
Oh, totally.
Very different. So, very. I've been blessed, as a lot of people say, that I've got this, like, as soon as you say, "Well, actually, I'm a Royal Marine," I'm trusted by a lot of people. Therefore, a farmer goes, "Well, if I can't trust you, who can?" type sketch.
It's kind of, yeah, you're not just some sort of nobody knocking on his door, "Can I bring my rifle onto your land?" kind of thing, which is where most people get a bit panicky. And I think that's probably, it's grown more and more as time goes by. So actually, yeah, we've come out a bit of a winner, really. You've done well to get lots of land from it.
Well, I've also educated quite a few people on like how you should, like, don't turn up in your camouflage kit with real tree kit on, with your balaclava on that you've been sat in a pigeon hide. Don't go and approach a farmer's wife dressed like that. Go and put a smart shirt on, put your jeans on, go and say hello, mind your P's and Q's, be polite, speak to them directly, say what you've got to say, and if they say no, say thank you ever so much, I'm sorry to have bothered you, and then move on.
Exactly.
And lots of people have gone, "Richie, I've knocked on 6 doors today and I've picked up 1,000 acres." And I'm like, "That's brilliant, buddy. Well done." And they're like, "I would have never have done it before if you didn't say about actually dressing correctly and speaking correctly to these people."
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot, and you hear all these stories. "I can't get land," and it's like, "Well, what did you go in?" "I went in the shooting clothes or my camouflage," and you're just like, well, they're not going to just go, "Yeah, this random lad's turned up in full camouflage looking to go shooting on my land." It doesn't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't. Unless you're like, he will get to learn you in that scenario, won't he? But I think first impressions are huge, especially when you say, "Can I bring a firearms?" Inadvertently, "Can I bring a firearms onto your land and wander around at night with a firearms?" he's like, who the hell is this guy? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the first question that comes in his head. It's like, I don't know you. Why do you want to bring a gun on my fields? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So carrying on from that, obviously that leads us to the next part of your sort of journey, which is obviously you got into knife making. Now, did that happen while still in the army, or was that something that as you finished and retired from the army, you started the knife making?
Yeah. So I'm going to correct you. I wasn't in the army. That's like saying a dentist worked in Asda.
You were in the Marines. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I knew. So because of my, and without going too much into detail to it, my ethos of how I've lived my military career is promote the youth. You cannot win wars with dead wood is like a real good terminology. You have to have youth that learn experience, that get the experience, that then pass it on. And if you forever are stagnant, you will never ever progress. So I've always had the desire to learn and promote the youth. When I got to my 23 years of service, and bearing in mind I served about 18 months as a child, so that didn't contribute towards my pension. So I had to do about 16 months extra, I think, in the end. They asked me to do another 5 years. Okay. And I said, if I do another 5 years, I will stop the promotion of 48 lads. And that went against every single kind of grain that I had, like my ethos of how I kind of like wanted my career to flourish. So I knew that my career would end when it was predicted to end as such. Okay. And there's not many jobs that you can get to the highest, nearly the highest rank, get A-star reports, and they say thank you ever so much, but you're not needed anymore. And that is the military. That is exactly what it is. So I decided in 2016 to make a bet with a friend. And he said, you claim you can do anything. Make me a set of knives. And I went, fine. The first one was ridiculously crap. The second was a little bit better. And the third I still own today.
Right. Okay.
So I found something that I was fairly good at. Now, I have a degree in engineering. Some people might go, so that means that you can build a gearbox, but you don't know how it works type sketch. But I do know how to build a gearbox, and I do know how they work. I studied geometry at school, so I understand edge retention. I understand processes of how things are done. So I understand how to get that knife hard. I understand shape and convex part of like your hands and how you handle things. So inadvertently, I make fitted shotguns for the knife men, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So I took that concept of it. So how did it really start? It started with a bet that ended me up making a lot of knives. And I think what I've done well for is because I'm a tradesman as a trade, but I'm a deer stalker at heart. So I am like inadvertently always looking for something a little bit better. I'm always looking for that better edge. And edge being a word, I'm looking to progress all the time, and I've just put all that energy into knives, and I think that's what's working for me in a real flippant way, that it's just kind of like, God, I'm now in the industry of the trade of the deer stalking world. I now have contacts throughout Europe, you know, and it's gone from a silly little bet in my workshop of can you do this? And I was like too stubborn to say no, I suppose.
But that's how some of the best start, I suppose, isn't it? You start off with the idea and the acorn, and it becomes the tree. So you're in the process of flourishing into that sort of that fully grown oak tree that's coming out of the ground kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like jumping back to like the deer stalking side, I did my DSC level 2 quite late. I think there was about 13 years between my DSC 1 and my DSC 2, and it was because I just didn't need it. I didn't require it. I didn't need anybody to assess me. I didn't know any AWs was one of them. No farmer ever asked me, are you a DSC level 2 so you can shoot on my ground? And then one day a opportunity came to go and work for the Forestry Commission that I still work for now, but the DSC level 2 was the minimum requirement.
Yeah.
I then did that and then went on to become an AW, and I started looking at people and I was watching them like use knives. And this was before I became a knife smith. I was like, if you had a sharp knife, you would have passed today, because you have hacked away at that throat so much that the esophagus is now bleeding out grollock. I'm like, you haven't done this, you haven't, and it's all because you haven't got a sharp knife. So I really saw a like market there that went, yes, people can go and buy a 10 quid orange handled knife. That's fine. If that's what you want, then keep the bloody thing sharp and use it correctly. Clean it, use it correctly. I have no problem with that. But because we're a human race of wanting better, and that is ultimately what we're into, I was like, no. People don't want just the average. People do actually want custom. People do want better. People do want stuff that lasts. And I quickly, when I made that bet, went, actually, if I do this well, I can get into a market here, because I know the deer world. I know what people want. I will understand in process and time what more people will want. And I think that's my heaven, I suppose, because
I suppose you're right, because actually the orange handled knife you talk about, lots of people have them, and if you keep it sharp, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's like your backup knife.
100%.
The bespoke knife market I don't know, it's probably in the last sort of 5 to 6 years it's really kicked off, and there's definitely more competition for you. But everybody likes to have that sort of, it's a bit of an heirloom, isn't it? It's like having an antique shotgun or something like that, something you can pass on down to the next part of the family or something. So a quality knife is, well, that's what I've done. I've made some knives, and they're for my kids at the end of the day. That is my trademark. Here you go, kids, pass that on. And if you don't want it, make sure it gets passed on again.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a really good thing, because I genuinely call myself probably the best custom knife maker in the UK. And I know someone will go, bollocks, what a load of bollocks. But I genuinely believe that. And I will tell you why. Because this is the kind of conversation I have with a deer stalker over someone that goes and buys a knife off a shelf. First of all, it starts off with, what kind of level deer stalker are you? Are you a novice? Are you a recreational deer stalker? Or are you, let's call it, a professional deer stalker? And those three elements are very different. So we have a novice that doesn't know where a flat joint is or an atlas joint. Therefore, that edge is going to take a lot more abuse. Therefore, I suggest that we put a thicker edge, a 25-degree angle on it, instead of a professional deer stalker that might have a 17-degree angle on it, which will last a lot more because he's not making those errors. So instantly, I am tailoring a knife for him. I then go, what do you shoot? He says to me, I shoot mainly muntjac and some roe with the odd fallow. Or he says, I shoot mainly red deer. Okay, automatically we have two different types of scenarios. We need a bigger, thicker knife for red deer, for bleeding it correctly and getting in and around the big cavity. Therefore, we need a bigger knife. Muntjac, exactly the opposite. Nice, dainty knife where we have to use around small anal glands and whatnot to get in there. And we don't need a bigger knife. Therefore, I'm tailoring that to that person. Then we go, okay, what style of knife do you want? Do you want a clip point? Do you want a Nesmuk? Do you want a straight back? Then we're talking now and we're going, Jesus Christ, we're only talking knives, but we've got so many parameters that this guy has to choose from. Then we say, what type of handle do you want it? The professional guy goes, I just want an orange handle that I know where it will be when I put it down when I'm doing 3 animals. Fantastic. That's what we can cater for. The novice goes, well, actually, I just need something sturdy, something that's going to meet the food hygiene standard when I go and do my DSC level 1 and my 2, etc., etc. So we're looking at different parameters that way. Then you say handle fitment. And this is the biggest thing, is I take the measurement of your hand. Now, I've become a bit of a connoisseur on size of men's hands. Yeah,
fair enough.
Because the average hand is about 8.5 to 9 centimeters long. Well, my friend Ryan Brentnell has got over 11 centimeter hands. He's 6'6", 6'8". He's 20 stone, massive, great big hands. Well, he can't use my knife correctly because it doesn't fit him. It doesn't work. It's like eating your roast dinner with a pitchfork. You know, well, actually, give me a proper fork. I need a fork to eat. I don't need a pitchfork. And then you go, Jesus Christ, we haven't even started making these knives yet. And I've taken all that information and I tailored that design to him. We then talk about sheaths. Are you a shoot one deer, use your knife, clean your knife with your little wipes and whatnot, and you go on, lovely stuff. Got a lot of time for that. Or are you the realistic part? Are you shooting like yourself up on the hill? You wipe your knife in the grass or on the back of his coat, and you put it in your sheath, in your plastic sheath, goes in your pocket, and you're on to the next one. And it's all about tailoring the perception of what that person actually is getting. And I know that people go, yeah, I could go and buy a Mora knife and that would do everything. You're absolutely right, it can. But some people want more. And I'm the answer. I'm the answer to wanting more. My custom scales are, I would say, really what sell me. Because I
was going to say, because you do a completely custom acrylic scale, don't you?
Resin. Yeah.
It's resin. Okay.
I mean, I've had people send me pin feathers from their woodcock that they've shot, a pair of woodcock.
Right.
I've had feathers from falconry boys that have taken it from their kestrels. I've even had people's ashes, their dad's ashes, where he said, I'm going to send you a matchbox with some ashes in it. It's my dad. I want it in my knife. I want to go stalking with him for the rest of my life. And I'm like, do you know what, mate? We don't need to part money. That's free. Because this means something way more than cost. And it's endless. I mean, I did a Land Rover one for somebody. He said, my dad's mega into Land Rovers. Can you do a Land Rover theme knife? And I was like, absolutely. I went and got some badges with the Land Rover emblem on it, and I made this beautiful knife handled out of Land Rover badges, and he was over the moon. And I was like, that's custom. It's
the personal touch, isn't it?
It is, mate. You're absolutely right. And I think that if you're going to call yourself a custom knife maker, you have to start ticking more boxes than, can I buy that knife off the shelf? If you buy that knife off the shelf, that ain't custom. That's retail.
It's exactly. It's knocked out in a factory, banged together and sold out, and that's it. But the next question is, obviously we've talked about the customization. Now let's go back to the bones of this knife, which is actually the steel and the hardness and how you get to where you are with it, basically.
So I, being an engineer, I'm a bit of a geek in the workshop. I like machinery, I like tools, I've got a 25 grand snap-on toolbox that I could never afford. I should have never brought it, but because I loved it, I did. My wife went mad at me when she was like, how much have you just spent on a toolbox? I was like, God. But I have a hardness tester, so that gives me a parameter of where, when I heat treat the steel, because before it becomes a knife, it's just a piece of metal. Before I even start working on that, I make sure that it is in a parameter of what we call 59 to 61 HRC, a hard rock test.
Right.
And if it's not, if it's 58.3, I throw it in the scrap metal bin. I do not take any kind of mitigation. Okay. And what that does is it allows me to guarantee my work, because when I send out a knife and I know that it's in the parameters of what it should, if it goes dull and you dent it or you break an edge on it or you put a crack in it, I know that you have misused that knife. And because I've got a good enough background of the thousands of deer I have shot, I know that if you decide to go down through a big fallow buck's rib cage and you then put that edge, roll that edge and whatnot, and you think you've got the audacity to have a go at me because the edge hasn't lasted, guess what? We have a conversation about, okay, buddy, this needs a bit of education. Not many knives are going to do that. However, what I will say is I have split loads of rib cages and loads of etch bones on young roebucks, young roe does, lots and lots of muntjac. I haven't shot a Chinese water deer, but I would imagine that they're quite a soft animal.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Just out of what I would
size wise and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
they've got to be smaller boned and lighter boned than that of going on to fallow and red, haven't they? And Sika especially.
Wow, you're absolutely right. So you can get away with it, but again, it comes back to that custom bit where I sold a set of knives to a bloke the other day, and he said, I'm shooting 500 fallow a year, and I want to be splitting chest bones with your knives. And I was like, let me go and find a different steel for you. And I went and found a different steel that has got a working hardness. So it's not brittle, but it's a working hardness of about 68 to 71. Okay. And it's a really, really hard metal.
So it's a bit like a tool steel almost in some
ways.
Very
much so. Yeah, very much so. He said, I think he's on something like 45 deer. Right. And I was like, what? And you've gone for, he said, fallow, mate. And I am opening chests up. And I made them quite long where they're quite a bit of leverage through them and whatnot. So he's got a good old grip to handle onto them. And I was like, yeah, but that steel is like 25 times the price of stainless steel, but it's what he wanted, and he was like, I need that because of what he's doing, where I was like, do you know what, you can buy a 10 quid saw, you know that.
I was gonna say a saw is really useful, and it's like you do exactly what it says on the tin. It cuts open bone, doesn't it?
But he didn't want that, and that is what he wanted, and we got to the final bit. He did. I have no bones and qualms about saying that he has to look after that knife. He has to resharpen that knife after a certain amount of animals, and that he has to maintain it. No different than checking zero.
Exactly.
You know, checking zero is probably as important as they come. But I would say making sure your knife is as sharp as it can be before you go out is not far behind.
That's it. At the end of the day, that tool, that knife in your pocket is everything. Especially, as you were saying, I'm up on the hill. A sharp knife is crucial. The work you've got to do up there to make sure that deer comes down. It's like, especially opening up those reds in the rut, you've just got to make sure it's sharp so it just gets in there. Clean job. You're off the hill as quick as possible.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I work with 3 different steels, so 3 different stainless steels. 14C28N, which is a Scandinavian steel. SF100, which is a British steel made from Sheffield, which is really good. I'm really enjoying that steel at the moment because one, it backs British, British made. Which I'm quite patriotic about. It's cheaper, which has allowed me to keep my prices down, which again moves on to making sure that I'm hitting that market. I'm hitting the working man, and I'm not robbing him, because I hate to be, I come from a real hard-working family, real like calloused hand family, and if I can keep my prices down, then that adds on. I'm not really, and I don't want to sound patronizing, but like I've got a good pension. Therefore, I don't feel like I've got to rob someone X amount of hundreds. for a knife. So, and the other one is AEBL, sorry.
That seems to be very common. That's you hear that come up quite a lot. Lots of people use it for the custom knives and stuff like that. It gets a good shine on it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is, mate. It's got a different process of hardening, which is fine. If someone requests that, I will go, yeah, no problem. I'll go and buy a length and deal with that. But ultimately, it comes down to how much of a geek you are in understanding carbon content. Yeah. And we're talking minuscule because they're all within a certain parameter of each other. So in some ways, if you want a blank that costs this much, but a blank that costs this much, is your problem, really, because they're all going to do theoretically the same thing. As long as they're heat treated and hardened correctly, you're going to get the same product.
That's the key. And it's getting the right edge and the sharpness and all your angles, which you were talking about earlier on, is crucial at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Understanding geometry about even edges and how they work, and one side not taking too much stress over another one. So making sure everything's kind of even is key. I mean, I have a little rule. I sharpen some other people's knives. I don't like doing it purely because I think they should go back to their own knife smith that made it. But ultimately, some knife smiths pass on. And so I have a little rule: is the knife sentimental? Yes, it is. Then I'll sharpen it for you. Has the knife smith passed on and died? Yes, he has. Then I'll sharpen it for you. Is that got a huge amount of are you that connected to that knife that you can't buy one of mine?
Yeah.
Is that your issue? Is that then I'll sharpen it for you. However, I refuse to sharpen other people's knives that I'm like, no, you send that back to him.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's it.
He deserves to sharpen his own kit. I don't know why you're sending it to me. And I'm sure that there's knife smiths that have gone, why am I sharpening one of Richie Nanksz's knives?
Totally.
I'm pretty sure there is, So a little bit of what's the word? Tradesman equity, I suppose, is the.
I suppose that's what it is in the market, and there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of these knife companies that, you to keep your guarantee, isn't it? You have to kind of send the knife back to them for sharpening.
Yeah, and that's something I do. I run a free sharpening service, and all I ask for is you to pay the postage. So if you buy a knife off me, you get a free sharpening service. At that time, because of the way I am, I will always polish it as well. You send it to me, and I had a lad the other day. He sent me his. He said, Richie, he said, I've done 25 reds in the last 3 months or something like that. It's gone dull. Can you sharpen it for me? Here's a £5 to send it back. And I go, absolutely fine. It came to me on a Wednesday morning. I sharpened it. I polished it. I had it back in the post Wednesday afternoon. He received it Thursday. He was Grolic Deer Thursday night. And, it's a service that I think is adequate. I think it's something that should go hand in hand. But I also do a lot of educational bits where I go, actually, I want you to be able to sharpen it yourself.
I think that's important, really. If you've got this tool and you don't know how to sharpen it, it's like, well, that's something you really need to learn. I think that's a fundamental. It's like any part of deer stalking. You need to know how to zero your rifle and sharpen your knife. Really,
absolutely. I think they're the two most fundamental parts of. If you haven't learnt this yet, if you know where all the glands are in a deer, but you do not know how to sharpen your knife, I'm not going to say you need a word with yourself, but you need a little bit of time spent in a bedroom sharpening a kitchen knife of some sort.
Go learn to sharpen a knife and cut something, because actually, realistically, there's not always going to be somebody there to hold your hand, especially you're stuck on the hill and it's gone dull. You've got to do something, haven't you?
You've got to do something. Well, I think do not the DSC level 1 go a dull knife is a dangerous knife or something?
I think something like that. Yeah.
I think they say a sharp knife is a safe knife.
Well,
or something.
it is, and I've always tried to teach the scouts and all the rest of it. If you're going to have a sharp knife, at least it's a clean cut and we can stick it back together quickly. But if
Yeah.
you've got a dull knife, it's a jaggedy cut and it makes a hell of a mess, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, mate. It's
But it's one of those things. You probably, well, we've both seen it. You get people that have got knives that it's like you could do more damage with a spoon.
well, I always say if you haven't got a sharp knife, you have got a spoon.
Pretty much, exactly. You're not going to cut anything with it, are you? So it is worrying, really. But yeah, well, hopefully there'll be lots of people going, maybe that's what I want for Christmas is learn how to sharpen stuff.
And I absolutely do not hide behind any kind of silver cloud lining that I only talk about my own knives. If people are using a knife, bearing in mind the knife has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, if you don't know how to sharpen it, then watch one of my videos on Instagram and you will learn something. I mean, at the stalking show, at the shooting show last year, I had thousands of people asking me questions about, wow, is that all you do? And I'm like, oh yeah. It's not a complex. This is definitely not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's a process that you just need to do. And I hide behind it. No, I tell everyone, it says it on their certificate. You've got a 20-degree angle. You've got a 25-degree angle. My bushcraft knives, I put like a 30-degree angle on it, unless stated they want something different. Some of the professional stalkers, like I've said, I've asked for like down to like 16 degrees, which they're happy sharpening.
Almost getting to scalpel area territory, isn't it?
But what, like yourself up on the hill, all you're actually doing is opening that belly up, pulling that gut content out, taping off the anal tract, cutting off at the back of the liver, boom, it's out. And you're like, that's all I've done. I've made a very, very small incision. That's it. I just need a real sharp knife to do that. When I get back to the larder, I'll use the larder tools.
That's exactly, and you've just ticked exactly. We get the saw, we've got knives in the larder. Yeah. Generally, the knives in the larder, I've got to spend 5 minutes sharpening because one of the lads has probably wiped it over the stainless steel and it's as blunt as anything. But hey, that's just our life when we get back down there. So yeah,
and that's the dirty side to deer stalking, isn't it? That is the where they say after the shot's taken, the hard work starts. I'm all about, can you reduce that hard work? And definitely, I mean, we'll talk about Ireland in a minute, but I mean, I've just been in Ireland and I ended up skinning 11 Sika and caping one, and I was astonished by how blunt my knife went because of the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Sika deer, because obviously let's get on to Ireland anyway, because obviously that's kind of it's where my deer stalking started, going out to County Wicklow stalking deer. I know you've just been over there, and anybody that follows your Instagram feed and social media feeds is going to see that you've been over there stalking some absolutely fantastic deer. Go on then, sum up Sika deer in about 2 words, 3 or 5 words max.
They're basically the Royal Marines of deer, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, totally. I think we said it the other day on the phone, aren't they? Yeah. If you imagine watching Jurassic Park and the velociraptors, these deer act in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to sound an idiot to people. I am a good deer stalker. I know I am. I've been told I am. My skill set allows me to be, and my results allow that kind of statement. I was absolutely humbled by how switched on Sika are. They are, anybody that shoots Sika on a regular basis, I take my hat off to you, because they are, I genuinely think they are one of the hardest animals to stalk. I was like, we've got like a 30-mile wind in my face, and these Sika hinds have absolutely pinpointed me in a heartbeat. I was like, no way. This just doesn't happen. This does not happen. This evening, I have got into a set of roe does, which I didn't know what they were. We were out stalking reds, but we got into a set of roe, and I got within like 25 meters of them. And I was like, you ain't got nothing on Sika. No way.
No chance. Exactly. It's like a walk in the park. It's like a herd of sheep standing in a field. Sika, you close the car door 2 miles away. They've heard you, and they're off. They're done. They're away.
I crept round the corner, and I was like, I had this Christmas tree on my chest, and I like crept round as if I was peering round a door, and I crept round, and I just watched this Sika hind literally just spin its head as if I was there waving this massive flag, and it just go. Arr! I was like, what? She's just nailed me straight away. What on earth is going on here? Off they're gone, and they are gone. I was like,
yeah, they don't stop.
Wow. And I was like, the wind is like so in my favor. What is it? And I was taught once upon a time, and I never used to kind of believe it, that deer have this like sixth sense, that they know something's where they're in their vicinity, that they know something's going on. They know something's not quite right. And that is enough for them to go, do you know what? I'm out of here. I'm gone. That is me. I have watched too many sisters get shot. I am gone. But it's the hinds. It's the hinds that kill you.
They're normally, as I said, I think we were discussing it. You're looking at a stag and he's 100 yards away. The chances are there's a hind standing in the trees 15 yards in, and she's eyeballing you. You don't even have a clue she's there, and you take that 1 footstep forward, and all of a sudden she squeaks, and that's it. The place clears out.
I was like, well, Richard, you have been done.
yeah. They're the only deer that get you, and it's that just at that early morning or last light, and literally that squeak is it's blood curdling.
But like I said to you, I was humbled. I had a newfound respect, and I haven't shot a lot of Sika, purely because, one, they're not in my area. I don't know very many people in Dorset, but I was actually astonished to see how much England was covered with Sika now. I was looking in one of the British Deer Society books where they show the national spread of it, and I was like, wow, that is a lot more Sika. Where I think we always saw it as they were quite populated in Dorset and that Dorset area. Now it's very, very widespread.
Well, they were Dorset. They were up in the Highlands, up towards Inverness direction and stuff like that. And but now, as you say, they seem to be everywhere. It really has spread out. Yeah,
I was astonished. I was actually astonished because I've got quite a bit of stalking in Oxfordshire, and there was Sika there. And another member of my syndicate said, I heard a whistle a couple of ruts ago, and I was like, "Shut up, you clown! Stop talking crap."
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But now I'm a little bit like, maybe.
Well, they'll move, they'll travel, and they because obviously they've got their hybridization. They can hybridize with the reds, but they're the same. They're the same idea as reds. They do travel. They're unlike your roe and things like that kind of are quite territorial and will stay put. The Sika will roam and move to find what they want.
So do you reckon, like, within the last, and let's say 20 years, they have expanded tenfold?
I would say the numbers have grown. I don't think it's very difficult. You look at this Deer Society stuff, and like what I look at for our area, and there's red population. It's like, no, there's no reds near me, but somebody's spotted a red, so it gets noted down.
There's 2 spottings.
Yeah, exactly. And I know why there's 2 here, because one of our gamekeepers let 2 of them out into the forestry. So of course now we've got a red population, and they appear, but it's just. It's tricky because you suddenly see this on paper and it comes as a block on the map, and all of a sudden it's like there's a population. So it's one of those things. We know we've got reds that come through and they trek through, and somebody said, I've seen a Sika. It's like, you sure it was a Sika? Yeah, it's definitely a Sika. It's like, or was it just a shitty red that looked a bit like a Sika kind of thing?
Long nose Sika.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it you never know. But I think the numbers are probably growing. But then Deer Society say that the numbers of deer throughout the UK are at their highest population ever anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that has to be true. I mean, I was told something that I didn't really kind of one believe and another one agreeing. And a bloke said to me, shoot every deer you see in a certain field and see how many deer you shoot out of it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. How many roebucks really can there be? I shot 28 roebucks out of one field this year.
Right. Yep.
And I was like, this is astonishing, because I've always kind of been like, well, he's a good roebuck, we'll leave him go. I've got no stalker to my left, no stalker to my right. It's Forestry Commission up in front, and I own everything at the back. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I'd make no bones about it. And I actually said to one of my good friends, I was like, I ain't going to see a single doe this year, because I've shot that many roebucks. And I said, I can't get over how many I've shot out of one field. They just keep coming in. And they would go from little spikers to fully mature 6-pointers to not so big 6-pointers to better 6-pointers to another couple of spikers. And I was like, this is horrendous. You don't realize how many deer are actually sitting on your peripheral location. And you go, gee, how many deer actually are out here? You know, and the British Deer Society are probably right in how many we've got, because I've shot way more deer in the last couple of years. And that might be because I've left the Marines and now do it full time. But I do think that there is, I mean, COVID's got to have had a massive impact.
Oh, I'm sure it has. That's 2 years where basically the deer population was able to expand. Luckily, some of us were able to carry on, because obviously I had the rights to get out and go shooting. But we've seen it even on the hills, where with the reds this year, herds of 200-300 stags. Wow. And it's just crazy. And it's you think we're shooting, well, we've shot what, 90 stags this season just on one estate. Yeah, good effort. And it's like that still hasn't really made an indent. But then you get other estates that they don't shoot on that boundary, and they don't shoot here because it's too far out. So the stags know they just roam across there. They're safe. Nobody's going to get them. Yeah. And it's okay. So Scotland's changed its policies and its laws, and we can shoot stags all year round. But as I say, we've made all the estates around us have basically stopped shooting stags. We're on to the hinds now, because hinds are population control. But you've got to take the hinds out now, and that's what does your population.
Yeah, we're the same down here. Absolutely. I personally would like to see the males just left alone a little bit. I think that I think from the back of April to August, it's just not long enough, you know. And people go on about like the fallow, the poor head quality of fallow, and I'm like, yeah, but you never let anything grow.
No, that's it. If it's got a piece of wood on its head, it gets shot, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's a spiker, I'll shoot it because it's a shit spiker. And I'm like, well, no, that spiker could actually grow into like a really lovely palmated fallow if you let it. But I'm not here to talk about people's ethics of what they should do or whatnot. but what I do, especially with the reds, is if like the other night I saw 6 males. They were still in like a bit of a bachelor herd, but they were all young animals. Yep. And I saw a spiker with about 1.5 foot of antler, and then I seen one with about 6 inches, 6 to 8 inches maybe. Yeah. And I was like, well, you're a poorer animal next to your brother or your cousin or whoever you are. So you're a poorer animal. And I think if you can do that on the ground and actually go, do you know what? The 3 deer I've seen this morning, that is definitely the worst one. Then you are then contributing to some sort of deer management.
Well, that's sort of our plan on the hill later on this year. Obviously, we'll go out, we'll assess what big stags we've got for next year, and then look at the smaller stuff. And then in between it, anything that's sort of, well, you're kind of a shitty 10-pointer. We'll have you out, and we'll have that out, and we'll have that out, and we may shoot another 30 of those out. But at least that way you've taken 30 of the bachelors out, so it's 30 less fighting for something. Absolutely. But it just takes a bit more off the land, doesn't it? Gives it a bit of chance.
Yeah, exactly that. And do you know what? I said to my friend Ryan this evening, I said I hadn't seen a roaring stag roaring this year, and I said that's quite uncommon for me. But the weather that we've had, We've had like one day we had it was like 7 degrees, and then the next day it was like 14 degrees. Then the next day it was 11 degrees raining. We went out on a fairly cold day where it was like 9 degrees. We could hear them bellowing in the bottom of the in like the bottom of like a spinny wood type sketch. And I was like, I don't think he's holding hinds. I really don't.
We reckon the hinds haven't. They're slow. They were really slow to come in with us. So the stag season's over, and now the rut is really kicking off because the hinds have suddenly come in, and you're a month into. You're almost 2-3 weeks into the hind season, and only now is the rut actually really going.
Well, I've got a friend up in Scotland, and he normally says to me he's in full swing of the rut, and then 2 weeks later down in Cornwall, our boys will kick off.
Yeah, so your temperatures drop.
Yeah, because we're a little bit later thinking, and I'm sure there might be a Cornwall stalker that will disagree with me. Then that's fine. But I've always said 2 to 3 weeks behind the Scotland rut, we will start seeing it. And if you're saying now that you're now starting to see it, then I think that we were mega early thinking the rut was on.
I was Wednesday for me. I was out with a guy, and that's when I put that video up of that stag walking below me about 50 yards away. Perfect. And literally the rut in action that was going on there. We had the biggest stags tearing around the place, and it's probably the most activity. And they were holding better groups of hinds, because beforehand we've had like one stag and he's holding all the hinds, but now it's breaking up, and it's been coming in pockets because we've had these cold days and it's warmed up again, and there's no rhyme or reason with it, but it's just the weather's been so weird.
Yeah, and I take it you've had the storm. Have you had the storm up in Scotland like we've had in Cornwall?
So we had a storm probably 2 or 3 weeks before that. Red weather warning, rain, absolutely annihilated a lot of the glen and caused a lot of damage. We're catching the tail end of what you guys have had down there now, so just rain, but the wind is luckily not with it, so it's not too bad.
Well, we had 100-mile-an-hour winds down here, but that is nowhere near what I had in Ireland.
I was going to say, the stuff you get over there, it's just meant. Well, you'd have seen some of the videos I posted. I can get 100-mile-an-hour winds. You walk up to the top of one of the corries and stand there and almost float. But what you would have got in Ireland where you were would have been some mental weather.
There was one day that I looked at the lad I went with, who is 70 years old, by the way, and I said to him, Alan, this is ridiculous. I said, I've got waterproof trousers on, gaiters on, Mendel boots up, high top getting Mendel boots. I said, my feet are full of water. I said, where has all this rain come from? He said, welcome to Ireland, bye. Welcome to fucking Ireland. I was like, Jesus Christ. I could have jumped in my local harbour and come out drier. I have never experienced rain and wind like that. And Sika, they don't give a shit, mate. They were stood out in it, just shaking it all off them. And I was like, what is going on here? This is mental, isn't it? It's like the Wild West.
Yeah. And just carrying on with that, it's like most people in Ireland, the rifle minimum caliber and things like that, I don't think it has changed, and it's still minimum caliber to take a Sika is like at least a 2.2. So that's your 2.23s and things like that, and 2.43s. Yeah. And it's crazy when you look how thick, you were saying about skinning them out, you look how thick the necks are on them, and you understand now why everybody in Ireland realistically only goes for like a neck or a head shot, because I think you had a story of one that ran on.
Well, I met up with one of the other syndicate members in the evening, and we had a bit of pint. So we lived off grid. It was fantastic. So beautiful. We lived off grid, no internet, very little electricity. So when I was we'll call it a shower. I was in the shower and my friend Alan put the kettle on. It went dark. So that's the type of electric we were on. We had a fire. I used to leave my phone in the truck at night. It was fantastic. But one evening we met up with a person called Joe, and he said, I hear you had a deer run on today, Richard. And I said, I can't believe it. I said, I come up its shoulder, pulled back a tad, bang, pulled the trigger. Deer flipped its legs way above its head at the back, ran with its like shoulders pointing to the ground. Perfect heart lung shot. It ran at least 300 meters and then got to cover. He went, "Did you find it?" I said, I stayed on my hands and knees in these thick Christmas tree plantation where I couldn't see 3 inches in front of me. I said, and I finally found it with its heart totally blown to bits. And I was like, I just don't understand why they run so hard. I really don't understand it. He went, "Well, that's nothing, young man. I shot one like that tonight with a 300 Win Mag and the bugger still ran." I was like, "A 300 Win Mag?" And he went, "And I'm firing a 200 grain bullet."
Yeah.
I was like, "Jesus Christ." I said, "And it still ran." He said, "I wouldn't have fed the heart to my dog." He said it was that blown to bits. He said, and that thing probably ran 200 meters. He said, but it ran into open ground so he could see it. And I was like, I'm astonished. I'm just so astonished. So anybody that thinks about going now, what? This is a really good question. Do you think the Irish Sika are harder because of the weather, because of the terrain, than the English Sika?
I would say the Irish Sika are probably one of the best and the hardest stalks you'll ever do. I think the English Sika are slightly softer. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
And the amount of pressure they get in Ireland, that's the only other problem, because their season is so short, you see.
Yeah.
Their season comes in August and it finishes in February. So everybody over that winter period is out trying to nail everything they can. Whereas obviously the UK, the stag season is longer and things like that.
Yeah. But I was astonished, absolutely astonished by the knockdown power that these boys could withstand.
Yeah.
I went over in the stag season, so the hinds weren't in. I was fortunate enough to shoot 3 8-pointers, one being a bronze. And that one, actually, he didn't run that far. But as I shot, he turned and I was like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. That was the worst. That was the worst decision you did." He turned quartering away from me and he just showed me that pocket of his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was a bad decision, mate. You should have turned the other way. I squeezed the old 308. I was using the 308 GMXs. I think they're 150 grain coppers. Bang. And I seen him absolutely rear up. And then he went out of sight. And Alan said to me, he said, "Do you think you've hit him hard?" I was like, if he runs off after that, then I'm putting my rifle away because we need a bigger rifle. And I found him about 50 meters and I found a lovely, great big blood trail. And some would say that's like a perfect shot in through the back of the left shoulder and out through the front of the right. So It's gone through, took heart and lung with it, almost demobilized 2 shoulders. And in some ways, for a big, strong, testosterone filled stag, that's the kind of shot, other than a neck or a head shot. And
we've seen Sika stags actually going for it with reds on the hill over in Ireland, and those things, they will and they're smaller, but they stand their ground and they've got the power to hold those reds back.
I don't know a lot about Sika, but my Sika, the big one I shot, was 66 kilos in body weight on the hook. So I would imagine that's quite a big Sika.
That's a fair size Sika. Yeah, exactly. Because it's a beast of an animal, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, and he had a hell of a mean look about him. He just
it's when they turn and look at you, isn't it? It's like that the only deer you can ever see that really says, I'm going to do you damage if I come over there.
Well, he reminded me like of a drill sergeant that was like, "Are you eyeballing me? Are you looking at me in this manner, mate? Because there's only going to be one winner here." And
totally. Yeah.
He picked the wrong boy with a rifle that day. But I mean, one of the other Sika 8-pointers I shot, I was a little bit worried because he wasn't very far away from thick cover, and I had a quick assessment of the area, and I was like, shit the bed. if I heart lung him, I'm probably not going to see this animal. And I decided to go for a high neck shot. A high shoulder shot. So I came up the shoulder and then came into the neck and then drilled it in there. And I find that's got like lots and lots of arteries, and I'm evidently going to hit a spinal cord.
Exactly.
I'm not going to ruin the back straps in too much of a way, but I didn't want to go into the neck and blow a hole in the neck and just blow his windpipe out or that type of thing. So I was like, I'm hitting body, I'm going to hit hard, I'm going to demobilize, and I'm hopefully, and that thing just dropped on the spot, just like polaxed, which I was like, and it's a real weight off your shoulders, especially when you see him run that hard. Yeah. And that's a 308, and a lot of boys will go, well, a 30 caliber rifle should knock down anything. Well, have a guess what, boys? It doesn't.
Well, that's it, exactly. A friend of mine shot a big old Irish fallow 308 in the neck, and the first bullet tracked around the fat in the neck. The second bullet, it was like he was chasing it across the field and he shot at it, and eventually it 3 to stop it. And it's just like, it just goes to show a 308, even on the reds, we've had the 308, it's going all the way through, but you find the bullets just lodged on the back side under the skin. And it's just like, that's 150 grain 308 thumping at that, and it hasn't actually gone all the way through them. So it is,
they deserve a huge amount of respect.
Totally.
Which all deer do. Please don't get me wrong. All deer deserve it. But if you hit young muntjac or a Chinese water deer or even a roe, they are not going to withstand that type of pressure. They are not.
No.
And it's like I said to you, I quickly looked at the back of one of the Sika, the big Sika I caped out, and he had at least 10 to 12 mil of leather on his neck. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? I said, are these growing?
So thick.
That is a serious sound. And I don't know if that's just a evolution to protect them from the cold because of on that back of their neck and whatnot. I didn't find their front of their neck as much, but their backs of their neck, I was like, this is insane.
But it's when you get them and they're full of fat as well. The Irish Sika seem to the fat content in them is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, they managed to turn the most rubbishest of vegetation into fat. Which is extraordinary.
And we were discussing this the other day. It's you find the different animals out there, the different heads. If they find a good mineral source and something like that within the forestry, the heads on them, they just grow so much better.
Thick.
Yeah.
Just thick. It's I was humbled. Anyone, but I tell you what, County Wicklow, what a beautiful place you are. It is absolutely beautiful. Anyone that's into the stalking world of the experience, like we talked about the other day, the experience on the hill, experience in that weather, experience in the hard work getting up and down it, experience in the wind and the conditions, then the stalk comes into place, then the grollet comes into place, then the drag back comes into place. County Wicklow is as beautiful as they come, but as mean and as harsh as a wild wind.
Absolutely. It can be beautiful and sunny, and then you shoot something in the wrong place and you've got to drag it uphill to get back to where you're going.
Well, I shot one of the other 8-pointers quite a distance from the truck, and I turned round to Alan and I said, right, we got 2 options, Alan. I went, either I put this as a backpack and we backpack out and we stalk some kind of way out. I went, I don't know how good that's going to be because I've now got a 60-kilo deer on my back. Well, probably more 60 kilos, but 60 odd kilos on my back, which I said I'm happy to do. I said, or I've looked on the map and we go 500 meters down through fixed vegetation and we get cut to hell on Christmas trees and brambles and brash,
that's
and
it.
we hit a major track. And he said, well, what would you like to do, young man? Because I'm not dragging this deer, you are.
Oh, fantastic. Yep.
And I said, I suppose the question is do you want to follow or stalk?
Yep.
And he turned around and went, I think we should stalk. I went, and I thought you would say that. So I backpacked this bloody Sika about a mile and a half while we attempted to thermal and look and assess. And we were still seeing deer. Deer. And I said to him, I said, you shoot one now. I said, you've got to come into the fold. You've got to come into this bit of the scenario. Because I said, because I can't take two. I said, we got to come back. And he was like, no, we'll leave that one. We'll leave that one. That's not good enough. We'll leave that one. And I was like, God almighty, I hope he keeps saying we'll leave him, because this deer is getting wetter. It's getting heavier. But nah, unbelievable. So privileged to have gone to be a guest over there. I've now sent that deer to the taxidermy to a bloke called Steve Brown up in St Helens Way. He's done one for me already. I think he deserves a good mention. And he said to me, he said, this is a cracker, mate. This is a real cracker. He said, you didn't shoot this in England, did you? I said, no, I shot it in Ireland. And he said, well done you, mate. He said, this is a fantastic animal. He said, this is the best Sika that's not a high medal quality that's come through here. He says, it's got beautiful genes, lovely and symmetrical, real thick tines.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, I feel very privileged. I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to shoot it.
I think the Sika, because obviously they were taken over to the Guinness estate, and that's where they've escaped from. Yeah. So that there's nothing really that's mixed round with them. They are still the same genome that were taken over there, and you can tell that because the quality of the animal over there compared to the stuff you see being shot in this country or Scotland, it's completely different.
Well, I was speaking to the bloke who actually invited us over there, and I was saying there seems to be a huge amount of stags. I said, and I also am seeing, I mean, bearing in mind we're in the rut, I'm seeing like big 8-pointers just tolerating spikers and tolerating 4-pointers, 6-pointers, and other 8-pointers. And he went, there's that many deer over here. They don't compete. They really don't really compete against each other. He said, when you get a big boy, he said, like what you said, he said, you won't find another big stag like him. He said, you might find the odd pricket or whatnot in around the peripherals. He said, but you won't find another big boy because he won't tolerate him.
No.
And I was like, what I also noticed is, and the whistling or the bugling or whatever you want to call it, that's quite new to me. And I noticed the harder we bugled, it blew and it pushed the younger animals away. And there was a couple of days where we were bugling quite hard because they were bugling in the thick in the wood. And we were having this like Mexican standoff. And I was like, well, you're very different to our red deer, because red deer, he'd be out here now going, come on then, let's have it. Let's have this out.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to fight like, and it might be that I just didn't witness it, and they might do it. But I saw it more than once. Younger, like maybe not beamed animals or very small beamed animals, they would be running when I whistled hard. Yeah, and I was like, maybe we should whistle a little bit softer. And Alan was like, why do you think that? I went, just whistle a bit softer. Let's go a bit softer. And we moved to like another area, and we whistled a bit softer. And it was the first time then we had an interaction from a smaller animal.
Yeah, because it's like I can have this. Whereas if you're a big animal, it's like, well, we'll get a way out of here. Because as you say, you're whistling across the valley to a bigger one on the other side. He's whistling back, and it's one of those things. Is he going to come in? And you're waiting and you're trying to wait and see whether something comes to you, and sometimes it doesn't. They just keep whistling.
Yeah. Very mysterious creatures. Just very
well. That's where they get the name the ghost of the forest, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're there. They're always watching you. But yeah, as anybody that's thinking about it, that is the place to go and stalk Sika, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's an experience. And do you know what? And I'm going to say that the travel from me, I live down in Cornwall, and I stalked quite a bit up in Inverness-shire. For me to drive from Newquay to Holyhead and get across on the ferry and then down to County Wicklow is under 400 miles.
Yep.
You know, and that's a fair travel. Someone might go, Jesus Christ. But let me tell you this, for me to drive from Newquay to Inverness-shire, I'm looking at like 770 miles and a 16-hour trip because the country roads up there are like Cornwall.
Yeah.
And it's opened my eyes that actually, do you know what? You can get over to Ireland a lot quicker and a lot easier than you probably think. And if you can, and realistically, if you're not going to apply for a Irish hunting license, like I didn't, I used an estate rifle.
Yeah.
You can fly straight from like Newquay to Dublin for about 40 quid.
Yeah, totally. Because I used to drive, well, I used to live in Leicester and we just used to drive to Holyhead and across. So no problem. It was like 3-4 hours tops. But now, obviously, when I used to travel down from Scotland, it's always take the midnight ferry. But you're looking at the best part of, 400, 500 miles just to get to Holyhead. And then midnight ferry, 8 a.m. arrive. Another hour and a half to get to where we used to stay and out on the hill by about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Brilliant, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Absolutely.
And the ferry crossing cost me 250 odd quid.
Yeah.
And that was to pay. And I went in the private lounge as well. I thought I'd go a bit posh.
Oh, you had the posh bit. I normally get the cheap economy and sleep on the sofa by the window on the ferry.
Well, to be honest, if I ever go again, that's what I'll do, because all I actually did is just fell asleep.
Yeah, that's it. It's that's why for us it was always the latest ferry you could get, the midnight ferry, because it was always quiet. We always had firearms and it was easy because you just rock up at the port straight through, have a chat with the bobbies at customs. I ended up, it's always the chief of police I always ended up managing to talk to, and he'd tell me all about the shooting up the shooting ranges and everything he used to do. Get on the ferry, get off, no issues at all. And in Ireland, coming back, it was just as much of a doddle, really. Yeah,
well, my little downfall was I obviously have got my business. I had Richie Nankz Knivez written across the back, and that obviously drew a little bit of attention to the custom people. And they were like, oh, so have you been over here selling knives or buying knives or something? I was like, no, neither. We've been over hunting, explained it. And do you know what? They were fantastic about it, because we said, well, we come to Ireland to use your facilities, your hospitality, your beautiful countryside, your stalking. We put money into your community. And they were like, that's fantastic. And there are these city folk really probably live in Dublin. But Dublin City, and they were fine with it. They were like, oh wow. And the Alan who I was with, and I don't want to go too much because I don't know how much he wants me to really kind of publicize, but he's been a deer stalker. He's 70 years old now, so he's been a deer stalker for best part of 50 years. He taught most of the Irish community of deer stalkers their DSC level 1. He came over and he introduced the DSC level 1 and introduced it into Ireland. They then adopted it for a certain period, and he's made this like massive community with them. And it's almost like it's its own little palace. It's his own little paradise over there, because they've got this kind of huge setup with the amount of deer they've got, but they haven't got like the industry like England has. They haven't got that. And it is very different. I think acquiring ground over there is quite relatively easy. I think really, as long as you've got an Irish-speaking accent, you walk up to the farmer, and as long as you're not a tinker, I think it's all good.
Exactly. Everybody knows everybody, especially in County Wicklow. You literally rock up and you mention somebody's name that you know somebody else, and they're like, oh, that's fine, you crack on. Yeah. Off you go down by the trees. I saw a deer down there yesterday, kind of thing.
And I don't think I'm out of turn saying that. I think it genuinely
it's genuinely true. That's how we got our land over there. Literally, I knew a guy, went over. We ended up with, I think I said to you, about 500 acres in about half an hour.
There you go. You wait, after this podcast, people will be just getting flights.
Don't bloody tell them how to land in Ireland. That's
I'll
exactly.
be banned. You'll be kicked off air.
Yeah, totally. But it has changed over there now. Obviously, yeah, when we started going, there were no real big outfitters doing it, and there are guys that have started up, and it's such a small world. You know them all, but Irish Sika seem to be the thing that come up more and more, and you've got a lot of Scandinavian and foreign guests want to go over and go after Irish Sika now. So yeah, all fair play to them. It's another outlet, and especially with the way that, well, the game dealer market and everything else in there changed, so it gives them something to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, they're getting about 180 a kilo over there at the moment, but they're and I'm going to say this, I think they're a little bit more stringent on carcass damage.
Yeah, they've got tighter on it, definitely, because I remember going to one of the game dealers over there. When we presented ours, the guy looked at it and went, "Did you do this?" And it's like, yeah. He goes, "I'll show you some of the quality we get." And when he looked at it, he was just, just our skill set compared to what they were getting originally. It was almost like, as I say to you, grollocked with a spoon, and you're just like, what did he do? Drag it through a river as well at the same time?
Yeah, but I think they're trying to up that standard over there.
Yeah, but they had a process for everything, even all the skins. It was like, what's going on with that? Oh, we've got an outlet for those. So there was nothing in their process actually being wasted, which was really good.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Something I would like to bring up is about my knives and it's a bit of a gimmick, but it's not. I call it the crew membership. So when you buy a knife off me, I kind of inadvertently add you to my crew membership. And a prime example happened tonight. I was out stalking with my friend Ryan. I went, listen to this. And it was two blokes that don't know each other that became friends because they brought my knife each.
Right.
I then said, you two have got the same postcode. You live quite close to each other. Do you two need friends? And it's a little bit like that military ethos of sticking a pack together, being tight together. My wife explains me sometimes as being a little bit of, and I don't know the right word, what a male version of a feminist is, but I'm very male orientated. Like, brothers have got to look after each other. We've got to look after each other. And I had a message off two blokes tonight, and they were like, we're out tonight. We've shot a fallow buck and a fallow doe. Knives working brilliantly, mate. Hope you're well. And I was like, and 9 times out of 10, all I send back is a thumbs up or a good lad, good effort, lads. But I've created this and I'm trying to create, and it is taking off, but it isn't quite there yet. I'm trying to create this community where people just fucking get on. I just want to get on. And there are a lot of things, and I've had people ring me and go, can I speak to you? And I'm quite big into the mental health side of things because of my background and whatnot. And I've had blokes ring me and go, you're the only bloke that will listen to me. And I've said, yes, of course, mate. Yeah, of course. What's up, mate? At the shooting show last year, I had a lady come up to me with a bloke, and I didn't recognize him. But she said, I want to thank you because without you, I wouldn't have had him. And I went, oh, really? She said, he talks about this crew that he's in, and it's imaginary crew. And I went, well, it is. Yeah, it is kind of, really. We're not like biker gangs walking around with patches and stuff.
Yeah.
But he said he had the audacity, he had the courage to speak to you at his lowest. And I need to tell people this, and it's not, I don't care if you don't have one of my knives. If you're struggling out there, there is someone that will listen. There is somebody that is willing to pick up the phone, because I have unfortunately had to experience way too many boys that don't pick up the phone. Yeah. So I've created this crew membership, and it's working. And I think that's a real, and it is a bit of a gimmick. But but some boys don't think it's a gimmick. They wear my hoodies now, and my mum said she seen someone in Asda the other day wearing one of my hoodies, and I was like, I've not sold a hoodie to anybody locally. And it was a bloke down on holiday, and I put a little message out on Instagram, and he went, I'm staying in Mevagizzy. Your mum must have seen me. And I was like, that's ace. I love that.
That's really good, though.
But my mum went up and spoke to him. And she went, that's my son's company. That's my son's business. She went, and he went, well, Mrs. Nankara, then I need to give you some love. And she was delighted. She was absolutely over the moon with it, you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I don't want to dwell, and hopefully we're not going to end now. But
No, not at all. And
yeah.
Actually, just touching back on that, it really is important, because we have obviously had a bit of a tragedy up in the Glen as well, and a situation that if the guy had, we don't know what the situation was, but if he had actually been able to talk to somebody, he may still be with us. One of our gillies took his life.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. You've touched on it, and us as blokes who are listening to this, we all have that. We were all taught as kids not to cry and show emotion. Our female listeners, they go and talk to their mates and they get on with it and they talk about stuff. But us guys have been told you got to man up and get on with it. And actually, realistically, in this day and age, if there is a problem or you've got something that you need to speak to, just pick up the phone. People will talk. People will take the time to listen to what you've got to say. And it's super important. And actually, I think a lot of guys worry that they're going to say something and somebody's going to go, oh, I'm going to take you, I'll report you, and your guns are going to go and stuff like that. Yeah. No, just talk about it. Just 5 minutes on the phone is 5 minutes of your mental capacity that suddenly you've got your head clear, and actually you can crack on and keep going.
Absolutely, mate. I've walked this path, and I tell you what, I would give up my guns for a century to never go back to feel in a state where you're like, do you know what? This is a shit place to live. And do you know what? The nature of my job kind of went hand in hand with that. But I speak to some people, like, and I always ask, how are you doing, mate? Are you okay? There should never be a conversation that doesn't start with, how are you? Are you okay?
Yeah. And it was quite interesting because I had 3 lads out on the hill the beginning of this week, and we were discussing something because they didn't know, and they'd been stalking up there for like 12, 13 years, and they hadn't been told that obviously our ghillie had gone. And he said, we have a good one that we phoned friends up and we asked them on a scale of like 1 to 10, how are you this week? And if they give you an 8 the first week, but then you phone them the week after and he goes a 3, he goes, well, last week you were an 8. Why are you a 3 this week? Talk to me. And it's just such a simple thing that you can suddenly, actually, it's an icebreaker, isn't it? You could crack on with it. Anyway, let's move on from that. Let's not dwell on the past, but it is there. Get people to talk about it and stuff like that. Now, I had something, and you asked on social media, did anybody have any questions or anything? So go on. Nobody came to me, so let's see what you've got. Nope.
Okay. Well, other than get a haircut, you scruffy fucker. God, you look like John Wick. Lots of insults. I had about 25 insults. One of the biggest ones, and this is a huge one, was, what is the art of sharpening a blade?
Okay.
What is the fundamental rules to sharpening a knife? Now, I'm going to speak about my knives. When you buy a knife off me, I give you the details to go out and buy, let's say, a 60 quid sharpening tool like a Lansky.
Yep. And
I give you the parameters because I put a 20-degree edge on it, so that Lansky can put a 20-degree edge back on that knife. You watch one of my quick videos on Instagram about how you do it and setting up things and what will make it just that little. I'm all about taking away the 1%. If you take away 1%, then you've got 5% better quality.
Absolutely.
So the art of sharpening, and I say this to a lot of my lads that buy my knives, and they go, I can't quite get it hair shaving, or I can cut paper, but nowhere near like what you can in some of your videos. And I always say to them, I use a Tormek, and I should genuinely be sponsored by Tormek because the amount I have sold for them, that they owe me something. A Tormek wheel, if you don't know, please Google it. But it's a rotating stone wheel on a motor with an angle bar that allows you to put a knife at a certain degree. You use a little like instrument to measure the angle. And once that's all set up, what I say to them to do is to go 10 strokes singular on each side. And what that should do is very similar, like where a butcher will go down a steel.
Yep.
But it's a bit more coarse. So it's putting that edge back into the knife. Now, you have two things to do now. Once you've gone 10 on each side, and you could do 8 if you want, if it's already sharp, you're looking to find that burr. If there's a burr on one side, then have a guess what? Everything's you've got the Leaning Tower of Pisa on your knife.
Yeah.
You need to straighten that up. And what I say to them to do is once they get to like, if they're doing 10, once they get to like 6, it's very, very light. And you're just touching and through the stone. Then once you feel both sides of the edge, you're looking. So, yeah, I cannot feel an edge on each side. I don't have a lot of hair on my hands anymore. Equally so because I use it as a tester. But in some ways, the knife shouldn't actually be cutting hair now. Then you put it on the turning, the other side of it has got a rotating leather strop.
Right.
Then you put it on there and you do like a soaring motion where it's back and forth, back and forth. Then you turn it over, 3 on each side, then 2 on each side, then 1 on each side. And then you put it onto like a leather strop where you're using it like a John Wayne belt type sketch.
Yeah.
Then go and see. And if you can cut through paper, then have a look at the paper and see how clean that cut is. I have cut lots of paper and I'm like, that's not sharp enough. This paper.
You feel it snagging on the paper.
You're right.
Cutting through.
You're absolutely right, mate. And you will see the jaggedness of it. And what it does is that edge just needs honing a little bit more to take away. Imagine like your heartbeat where it goes up and down in a rhythm, and you see that's like what your edge looks like under 1,000,000 times magnification or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing. It's just the leather strop and that little bit of compound on it. That's enough just to clean that up and put that mirror finish on it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've ever come and seen me at the shooting show or the stalking show, you will see me demonstrating. And there isn't many times that I don't get a wow, whoa, you've done that so quick, wow. And bearing in mind, I do this daily, so it is what it is. I mean, I couldn't plaster, and if someone watched in and started plastering my walls, I'd be like, this motherfucker can work good. Look at this. I couldn't do this.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. That's it. But it's one of those things, isn't it? Once you get the skill, I always remember the old boy. It was one of the shows, and it was something like that. He had it was a compound and a paste and a leather strap, and it was just like, oh, that's really cool. And you think how he does it that way, and it's just, well, there you go. It's just it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the knife really, really sharp, and then ultimately it's about the feel of it. And you will know when it's sharp. Like I know when I'm pushing it up and down a leather strop, I'm like, this feels good, because there's you can sometimes feel a little bit of tension in it. And like you say, put a bit of what they call it, Smurf's poo, which is blue. I rub that into my leather sheaths and whatnot. But any kind of oil or any kind of compound of some sort is going to be better than nothing. Like they say in like the mechanical world, dirty oil is better than no oil. Is in your engine of your car.
At least it's got something to lubricate it, hasn't it? Exactly.
Yeah. So once you've got that type of sketch, and if it's shaven on the back of your hand or it's cutting through paper, lovely. That's enough. The more you take off and the more you put in, there's a very fine line of going from uber sharp to dull, and it can go there quite quickly. I have no problems when I'm out in the field, especially if I've shot multiple deer. I've got a little steel and a leather strop in the back of my truck. I have no problems of just putting nice and gently and controlled. I'm not talking like a Spanish waiter trying to cut frickin' whatever type of meat, you know, but nice and controlled, and it's just straightening that edge. That will remove no metal, but it will straighten and align your edge that you've already got. And sometimes that's what a butcher is doing, is he's just realigning his edge.
Yeah, so similar to, like you say, the steel. I've got one of those little like a butterfly diamond file, 1,000 grit, that in a leather slip. You just a couple of strikes on that, beautiful, over the leather case, and you're back to razor sharp, crack on.
Yeah, and that is the art. And people shouldn't, and I say this for all knife smiths, so I'll stand together with them. Just because your knife goes dull or blunt, it doesn't mean the knife is bad. It means that it's probably done a lot of work, and it's your job to get that knife back to it. Exactly same as if you've knocked your rifle or you've banged your zero out or whatnot. It's your job to get that rifle shooting straight again.
Oh, totally. And I think anybody that thinks a knife will stay sharp forever, it doesn't. You get a Stanley knife blade, you use it, it goes dull because you cut things that probably shouldn't cut. You put a new blade in it. You've bought this expensive knife. If you use it and you use it correctly, it will go dull. It needs sharpening.
It will do, and again, it comes back to that custom side that I really promote. Is the knife tailored for you? Is that knife tailored for you to use correctly? Are you good enough to use that knife correctly, and are you using it correctly? So if you're ticking only one of them boxes, then there's a cross in the others. So that's something to take into consideration as well, is the use and abuse that it gets, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So just firing on, have you got any other questions on there that you got in?
Knife care. What can we? So I really promote K-Dex sheaths, plastic sheaths. Purely from the hygienic side, where you can stick them in the the dishwasher, not a boiling wash, but
otherwise it just turns into a flat piece of K-Dex again.
Well, it does. Yeah, you have to remold it then. But you can get some food hygiene water in there or soap in there and whatnot, and you can get it in there. Where a leather sheath, not so much, you know. But it all comes back to, are you that stalker that goes out once on a Saturday, you shoot one deer for your chiller and your home butchery, absolutely fine. You're carrying wipes with you, and you wipe your knife down, you dry it off, you put it back in your leather sheath, lovely. You stick a filthy knife back in a leather sheath, have a guess what? You are harboring bacteria.
Oh, yeah.
And you take that knife out of that harbored bacteria leather sheath and go and then shoot your other deer 3 weeks later. Yeah, you can keep that venison, buddy, because I don't want to be eating it, because it's not great. But you get the traditional people that are like, no, I like a leather sheath. And I do like a person that likes a leather sheath because it's got a little bit more meaning to it. But leather work is my absolute nemesis. I would rather go and run a 40 miler than
do leather work.
I don't know what it is, because it's actually quite easy. But
it's just one of those things. Everybody has that. You make the knives, but that's what I did. I started making my knives, and I bought my leather sheaths in because actually, do you know what? It was far easier.
If I could get someone that would quite happily work for like £6 an hour and make me leather sheaths, I'd pay them, and I'd probably give them double time at some point.
Fantastic.
But I am trying my hardest to get better at leather sheaths, and I think but also, again, it comes down to cost. Leather is extremely expensive. And I want to appeal to the working man that maybe doesn't need it, doesn't require it, doesn't really, do you like that? Why am I spending £65 on a leather sheath? Stick it in a £6 plastic one. More than
exactly. Yeah. And for what actually, unless you're going to be showing it off down the pub, which you're not allowed to do anymore anyway, then there's no point in really having it, is there?
No. However, I do admire some leather work. I really do. There's some boys in Ireland. I don't know his name, but there's a boy in Ireland that is doing some really beautiful leather work, and I'm like, fair play, mate. But that's all he does. He doesn't make knives. He just does, and he's selling leather sheaths for like €100.
Yeah,
and I was like, bloody hell, you can buy a bloody knife off me for not much more than that.
The leather work is something. It's phenomenal when you look at some of the work they put into it.
Yeah. So definitely. The other question I was asked was venison sales, which I think is really pertinent at this time of the era that we're in at the minute, with game dealers not giving great money, and they have a reason for not giving that. If you home butcher and you put all your waste in a bucket and go and weigh a roe deer and weigh what you retain from a roe deer, you can understand where the loss of those pounds are. I really can. I empathize with them. However, I'm a registered food business that I do all my home butchery. I do put deer into the food chain via a game dealer because there's only so many deer I can process. But I am managing, and I say this very loosely, I am managing to turn, let's say, a 17 kilo red roe deer into 130 quid, 140. With a little bit of hard work. Yes, I've got a chiller. Yes, I've got a kitchen set up. Yes, but the registered food business is, but look at it like the like home cake ladies that make.
I think you're allowed to do 80 beasts a year or something like that, is it?
I don't even think it's got a number on it. Not really, because I haven't seen a number. But I said I am not going to require a bin for waste. I am not going to require X, Y, and Z because I'm not doing it on that scale. Any bones and hide and excess meat that I get will go back out onto the ground sporadically, which will feed badgers, foxes, rodents, crows, all the praised birds of prey, etc. And the lady from Cornwall Council was like, that's really refreshing to hear, that actually you're not just going to send it to landfill. That's actually really refreshing. However, a game dealer establishment, I would imagine, is very different.
I think there's been a big issue with, we're talking to guys down there, that the game dealers are now, most of them only want head and neck shot.
Yes.
Because minimal wastage, they can get more out of the carcass without having to think about, I've got to chuck the shoulders away or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of a back lung shot. And one, because I have a tracking dog that's pretty good. Two, I have full confidence in the ammunition that I use. I don't take risks, so that reduces a lot. And do you know what? I find wrecking about 6 ounces of rib meat a lot more better than actually
2 shoulders. Yeah,
there's quite a bit of meat on a neck of said. However, you are right. A neck and a head shot is much more desirable than a shoulder shot to a game dealer. Yeah, you're right.
But it's now put in. How do I put it? I think the game dealers down in England now, with this head and neck shot policy, it's going to put out there a lot more risky shots and a lot more animals running around with jaws blown off. And I think you said you use copper. There's already 2 of the manufacturers of copper bullets have turned around and up it for us anyway. We've had up here no neck shots because we've had ricochets off. We've had guys taking front on neck shots on the hill that would have been fine with a lead bullet, but the copper bullets bouncing off the vertebrae. And I think one of the keepers actually on the Balmoral estate was telling me about this. Neck shot, that deer went down. The one next to it suddenly dropped because it had been shot in the eye. Both deer weren't dead. And you're just like, well, that's mental. So they've basically turned around. If you're going to use copper on the hill, it's engine room shots. It's crazy, really.
Well, I shot a Sika in the chest with 150 grain GMXs, and I went to pin it in the shoulder, and it went out through the liver.
Yep. Yeah.
And, like, that animal was not quartering on that much to me. No. And that hit shoulder blade ricocheted down and went down, and luckily enough went out through, mashed the liver to bits and went out through like the 11th, 12th rib, whatever it is, on a Sika.
It's crazy though, isn't it, really, that we've gone, I know this is a whole nother topic we could go into. Yeah. But it's that thing that I think you've adopted copper. Yeah. We're still very much on the hill. We want the animals down. We're still going with lead. Our game dealer doesn't care. I know that a 308, 150 grain, Hornaday round, bump, that's dropping on the spot. Not got to worry. We've had too many this year. We had one guy came up with copper, and I think 3 shots to drop a stag.
Wow.
3 shots, 3 copper, 308 rounds, and it still didn't go down. And you're just like, this is just mental.
Yeah. Trouble is, I have heard people say before, and this might be a bit of experience for both of us, the second shot is actually creating more testosterone and drive for that animal to keep going. Quite
possibly, but it's you look at these stags that this boy shot with copper, and he turned around and he went, last year I came up here with lead, no problem. I've moved over to copper because I thought it was the way that needed to go, and I've never had this situation. And as you say, first shot, pins in its shoulder, the stag's like, I've just been hit. I'm getting riled up, I'll go again. The next shot, I've been hit again. I'm still going, and hopefully the third shot puts it down. But it's not what you want to see on the hill. Let's just say that.
No, it's not. No. What was the other question? What rifles am I shooting, and ammunition, which I think is quite pertinent. Yeah. So I shoot a Blazer.
Right.
I love it. I think it's a very safe weapon. I'm teaching my son, my youngest son, who is now 15, weapon safety, correct way of entering and dismantling, disembarking a high seat. And I think that a Blazer, I'm not disputing any other weapon won't do the same, but I think the Blazer system where I say, pass me the trigger, he takes the trigger out.
Yeah.
And if I hear where the safety catch comes off, we then have a conversation that normally ends up in press-ups over why are you walking around with a safety catch on, which I will say hasn't happened. But it's a safety feature that is there in place. I like the uncock system of it, where you just pull the lever back a tad and it's uncocked. But everything is still structurally the same instead of lifting a bolt. I don't know if lifting a bolt is the right thing. I also don't like pushing a safety catch on to lift the bolt. And that's just because my weapon systems I've grew up with in the military, you don't need to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. There's certain, right, as I say, I shoot an old Tika M65, and to disengage the bolt, you have to take the safety off. However, I've got a Seiko where you can leave the safety on, but you can disengage the bolt. Having shot a few Blazers on the hill this year, taking them off clients that have cocked up a shot or something like that, it's just what I've watched them, and it's that pushing the safety off. And I've always thought that safety catch can seem a bit awkward sometimes.
Well, I've actually had it explained to me that it's not actually a safety catch. We know it as a safety catch, but it's actually like a loading mechanism. It's actually It's actually preloading the firing pin.
Because that's why it's so awkward, and pushing up to get the red spot is actually putting the firing pin in. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so you're actually preloading the which, let's be honest, it is a safety catch because it won't work without that being forward. So exactly. It is, but it's a preloading mechanism where a safety catch on a normal bolt rifle will allow the trigger to work.
Yes,
which is different. So I shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor,
right,
and I'm not gay. Which is cool, which is cool. I shoot a 127 grain Barnes LRX, and I'm really passionate about this round. I did extensive testing with it before I really shot a deer with it. When I went over, I used to use Sierra Game Kings, which I loved, which I absolutely loved. I actually shot a couple of roe does late in the season when I kind of done all my velocity checks and making sure I was getting the right feet per second. I shot into an IBC container to make sure I was getting expansion at various ranges. So I went from 100 to 200 to 300. And I was like, okay, so I can tell that this round, and the reason I use an LRX, and it stands for long range expansion, is it expands at 300 meters like a TTSX does at 100 meters.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So even with the drop off of velocity, you're still getting the same expansion out of it.
You're still getting the same expansion. Especially if you have got a muzzle velocity of around the 2,850 feet per second, which in a medium caliber rifle like the Creedmoor, you got to have a fairly long barrel to get anything more.
I was going to say,
I shoot a 20-inch barrel. I think if you were to go to like a 24 or a 26, I don't know if they do a 26, but they probably do. You would then probably get up around the 3,000 feet per second, definitely 2.9, which again, it's going to work. It's going to work.
Oh, yeah.
What I was getting is I was shooting these roe and they weren't reacting. And I was like, what's going on? And they take 2 steps and do a backflip.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, that animal has just been almost polaxed but it hasn't done anything. And I was grollicking these deer, and I tell you what, I'd never seen damage like it. Right. But what I did like about it was the near enough 99.9% bullet retention was something I was like, okay. So then I moved on to some fallow, and I shot some fallow in Oxfordshire in a woodland environment under the 100 meters. And again, these animals were just polaxing on the spot. And I was like, Ragnar, you're going to be made redundant here in a minute, my tracking dog. I was like, right, well, the big test is what can it do to red deer? What will red deer withstand? I shot some calves first, which absolutely polaxed. I shot a couple of hinds, which reacted in a way they knew they'd been hit, but they just like ran and then stopped and then just fell over, or they would just stand still, like as if I'd gut shot them. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? Do I shoot him again? Oh God, what? And it was all a little bit new, this like new scenario of how bullets are reacting or how deer are reacting to the bullet. And in the end, I was like, do you know what? I'm slowly falling in love with copper. I really like. But I do think it's because I've got the right bullet, doing the right velocity, doing the right species, and I am putting it 99 times out of 100 in that engine room block,
which I think is the key.
Yes, and if I clip a shoulder, I'm still creating enough velocity to do damage. But I was finding on the reds, I was finding the bullets underneath the jacket.
And it's phenomenal when we took what was that, 129 kilo larder weight stag off the hill. The shoulders on that thing, it's just like, the bullet was just wedged. It hadn't even passed through, but that was a 308 again, and it just phenomenal. You've got to drive that bullet through it, and I think Tom uses 127 grain 308 round, and I'm a 150. His are faster and flatter, but they do the job. But we've discussed it. I'd rather the client hit it with something that at least a bad shot's gonna drop it than something that just doesn't do the job. Because the last thing I want to do, which I've done a few times this season, is have to grab a rifle, start chasing after it, get myself in a position and try and take a long shot.
Well, it's the dirty side to deer stalking, isn't it? Which people like turn a blind eye to, or say never happens. Well, it does. It does happen, and it happens to novices a lot more than they would probably admit. But it also happens to the professionals a lot, because they come complacent. I come complacent.
Yeah.
I shoot a lot of. I've got my own range. I'm very privileged to have my own range out to 800 meters. I got steel targets, all supplied by the steel target company. Hugh there, he's given me some fantastic deals, and I'm shooting muntjac at like 700 meters. But I tell you what, you don't get much reaction off of that steel plate. You hear is a ding, little dings, and you're like, there ain't a lot in that. There's not a lot of velocity in that deer at that rate. No. And it comes back to knowing your limits, knowing your kit, understanding your kit, understanding the parameters of the wind, understanding your surroundings. I mean, we were in on deer this evening. We could see them in the thermal. Couldn't see them in our binos. Couldn't see them at all. They were in thick cover. And I said to Ryan, I was like, they're here somewhere. I was like, they're down there. We just cannot get on them. But you just got to learn to back out and go, that's not a safe shot. It's not good. I'm not going to get away with it. And learning that. And you learn that 99 times out of 100 the hard way.
Yeah. Well, we learned. So we were out in that red storm. What was that? 2 weeks ago up here, and I have never seen wind drift on a 3. I've had wind drift in Ireland at the range there, and we had probably the best part of 3 or 4 inches of wind drift. I have never seen a 150 grain bullet on a 308 at 230 yards do 18 inches.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that just shows you the power of the wind coming through that corrie. And the boy shot, and I said to him, just go looking at your row target behind you. He went middle of body because we thought we had wind drift. He neck shot that deer. Yeah. And it was just like, that's just mental. It dropped on the spot, luckily, but it was just one of those things. It's just like, that just goes to show the power of the wind. And if you take it for granted that you think you can shoot when you're in these extreme conditions, it changes it completely.
Now imagine you don't understand what's happened.
Yeah.
I've taught quite a few people, and I'm not saying I'm a long range instructor or anything like that, but I understand ballistics. I understand trajectory. I understand a ballistic app. I understand how ballistics work. And I have taught more than 10 people how to take their rifle, and I've gone, okay, so you have shot deer at 100 meters. In 15 seconds, that deer is now at 310 meters. There is a target at 310 meters. Engage it.
Yeah.
And they've emptied magazines and hit dirt. And I'm like, that's a wounded animal. It is your responsibility as a stalker to knowingly shoot that deer correctly. If it goes wrong, which it does, it is your responsibility to then have the knowledge to go and shoot that deer, as long as it's safe in the parameters of what your kit will allow you. And if you can't take a 300 meter shot correctly because you don't know your kit, then that's irresponsible. It's very irresponsible. If you go, well, actually, all I do is stalk woodland, I'm never going to be able to shoot 300 meters. That's fine. I get it. But there aren't many fields that you can't go, do you know what, that deer, I shot it on the tip of the valley, it's ran down into the woodland and it's gone up onto the other field. All of a sudden, your trajectory, your windage, your ballistics have changed. You are now no longer in your comfortable zone. You have an injured animal that is now running. It is your responsibility to know what you can do. And I've had people come to me and go, I need to do that. I preach this quite heavily. And they've come, I need to be able to do this. And with a little bit of tuition, and I'm not trying to sell people, come and have a day with me, because I really don't want you to come and have a day with me. I am not promoting that. I will stress that. I am way too busy. But go and set a target up at 100 meters. Go and set one up at 250 meters and go, bang, reload, wait 10 seconds, set your sticks again, bang, shoot the other one. And get comfortable with it and get used to that. And especially where you live. I mean, most of your average shots, I would say, are 300 meters or something, isn't it?
Our hill. Well, the thing about it is where we've been stalking is You can push long shots if you want, but the other thing you've got with us is everything is, most of the time, it's a very big downhill angle. So you're looking at over 45 degrees, and it's explaining that to the client and how they're like, oh, it's 300 meters away. Well, actually, at 45 degrees at that range, it's only about 210. But I want you to aim. I need you to aim high. I need you to pin it right through the top of the shoulder, up near the spine. But that's not where the heart is. Trust me, in a 3D model, that's exactly where the heart is. I want you just to pin it there. And it's getting all of that to explain it actually to them on the hill, as well as that their heart's racing, they're pumping, they're thinking about it. They've realized that they're hanging over the edge of a cliff at the same time. And it's like, just pull that shot off. And when they do, it works perfectly, but then they overthink it and they go, oh, back to their DSC1. I've got to aim for the center of the body for the heart shot. You shoot low, you blow through it, you drop through the top of its leg, you blow its elbow out on the other side, and it's like, right, that deer, you might have clipped the lung. Let's hope it goes down.
I mean, this is a little bit, I would much prefer hit a deer high than I would low.
And that's what I've said to everybody now when we're out there is like, literally rest my crosshairs on the back of its spine. If you do that, you've got so much to drop. That bullet's going to hit something of vital.
I have tracked so many brisket shot deer. It is unreal. And I don't find many.
No, because
those deer run on.
And they can go a long, and people don't realize they can go a long way.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking of tracking, about a year or so ago, I had a good friend of mine. He was out with a client, and I thought they shot a fallow, because I know red prickets and fallow spikers, so that's the terminology I use.
Yeah.
And he turned around and he said, "I've shot a spiker." So I was like, "Okay, that's fine." So he shot a fallow. I got there. And I was like, God, it stinks of red here. He said, well, yeah, I shot a red. And I thought you shot a fallow. I was like, oh, God, we got a lot on here. I said, have you got shot of red? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, there's gut shot here, mate. You've got shot of red.
Yeah.
My young dog, she tracked that nearly 3 kilometers.
Bloody hell.
Through real thick woodland, forest, almost forestry and woodland. And when we got it, typically, like what gut shot animals do, they go to water. So it went down, and it was, I don't know if they go down there to drink, if it's like thirst that they crave, or if it's some sort of, I don't know. I don't really know, but they go to water when they're gut shot. If you ever gut shot a deer and you lose it, go and find your water source.
Yeah. That's where it'll be.
A lot of the time it'll be down by water. Looking out the window now, that could be absolutely anywhere. But we tracked this deer like 3 odd kilometers, and it was still moving. It was still mobile. We were on the tail of it, and it was still walking. And that was shot with a 308 copper bullet in the liver. And we always know a liver shot is quite a fatal shot. Well,
it takes time, but it is a fatal shot. Yeah,
absolutely. It takes time. And that animal was strong enough to keep moving. And once it was moving, it kept moving. And the guide managed to shoot it freehand in the end, put one in its chest. My dog was baying it and barking at it. And he managed to, he said, call your dog off. I went, just shoot it. The dog's like well away. The dog won't go in on it. And he managed to shoot it correctly, safely. And he was astonished about how hardy an animal can go when it's shot incorrectly. And I said, did it not give you another shot? And he said, no, the lad wasn't quick enough. He just got caught up in the moment. By the time I got the rifle, this animal just disappeared. And I was like, he said there was also other deer there as well. So there was quite a bit of confusion of which deer was struck correctly. And I was like, well, you done the right thing. And we managed to recover that. And that animal went into the food chain, you know? It was fine. It was okay. Obviously, the liver.
To be honest, we've seen reds that we've had it this season. They're so packed full of grass that we've had guys shoot them in the liver, and it's literally hit that top lobe of the stomach. But it's so packed with vegetation, the bullet just is absorbed. It's like a sandbag, and that's it. There's no bullet coming out, and there's no exit wound or anything. And in some cases we've had a liver shot where it's gone down. In some cases we've had to put a second shot in it to drop it. But you get over there, grollock it out, and it's, as I say, it's so packed, nothing's leaked. It's just a solid lump of green. You take it all out, it's clean, it's good to go.
Yeah, there you go. Look, yeah, and that again, that's the dirty side to deer stalking, isn't it? It's the realistic side to what really goes on. It's but hey ho. So what else have I got? I've got to say some thank yous, because at one point in my knife making life, I couldn't give a knife away. Like most knife makers, most probably, they had to surround themselves with people that would put a little bit of trust and use their kit. And I need to say thank you to these people, because they, without their help, I genuinely would not be, and I'm going to say successful. I wouldn't be. First one is my good friend Ryan Brentnell. I gave him the Brent knife, which I named. So I named a lot of them after them.
Right.
So he's Ryan Brentnell. He owns the Brent knife. And that's the unzipper. So it unzips the stomach, and where you would then go in on the bleed hole, where you go in the clavicle, and then you would go up to the esophagus. That is a perfect knife for any novice stalker using and starting out. Yes, you can go and buy an Eka swing blade, because it will do both sides. I have no problem. I learned on one of those knives. Brilliant bit of kit. However, I could never get the bloody thing sharp, which is in turn why I ended up buying knives from other people, that I ended up going, well, I'm just going to use this knife to open this bit. So Ryan, really good friend of mine. He's probably the closest part of my inner circle. Been out stalking with him this evening. But he pioneered that. He told people that this was the best knife when it wasn't, that he'd ever used. He had massive hands, so we had to kind of tailor it, and then we had to nurture it, and then we built around it. And he said, well, what about this grip? X, Y, and Z. So he really pioneered my Brent knife, which is the unzipper one. The next lad is Tom Davies at Dartmoor Deer Services. Fantastic lad, really quiet lad. Lives in a real beautiful hamlet on Dartmoor. He helped me in my Instagram. He got hold of me. Yeah, let me help you with your Instagram. I gave him a knife. I went out deer stalking with him, and I said, look, let's do some promotional stuff and whatnot. And I was like, you are really bad with a knife. You are like really clumsy. And he was like, yeah, I am so clumsy. I've got cuts all over my hands. I always cut myself. I'm always getting it wrong. And what I did is, and if you ever see one of my knives, it's got a like finger protection on it, and it comes down to straight edge, lovely pointed angled curvature to the blade. But it's got this finger swell, and then a lovely piece out the back, which you would then grip onto, and it indexes correctly because it sits naturally in your finger. From that point on, he never cut himself again, because he was like, I know where the tip is. I know where the sharp edge is. It's nowhere near this bit. So for any Egypt that likes cutting themselves, that's a type of knife you need, because it stopped him exactly doing that. And that's Tom Davies. The third one is definitely Mark Stobbsy down in Essex. He's a proper Essex wide boy. I ain't really been stalking with him, but he ain't a very big lad, and I would love to see him drag red deer, because I think he would be quite comical to watch. However, what he has done for me is, so I surrounded myself with people that did deer stalking, and I went, I need you to help me do this. But Mark, every client he takes out, he demonstrates my knives, he promotes them, he sells them, he has sold me without a doubt the most knives. So I'm endeavourably indebted to him. When he phones me and says, I need a new knife, I go, yeah, Bubba, I'll stop what I'm doing
and get you a knife sorted out.
The other lad is Byron Thornhill. Not a recreational stalker by realistic, doesn't shoot a lot of deer. Real country boy, lovely family man. My boiler and my water tank went bad. Click of a fingers. He was in his truck. He's a plumber by trade. Click of a finger. Down from Liverpool, down to Cornwall. Fixed it for me. We went out stalking. I think we shot a couple of roebucks. Really, really helped me. But what he does is he promotes me in such a good way. Is anything I do, there's always a thumbs up, and it's so good. Some days when you're in the workshop, you've had a shit day, and like I break knives, I break them, and I'm like, I've lost a whole day here, but he'll give me a thumbs up, and I'm like, cheers, mate. That's really, really class. Aidan Brown, I don't know if you know him. He's a rogue.
I do. Yeah.
He is without a doubt funny, and he's quite new to me, really. He's an ex-army lad, so I've got like loads of banter with him. And he's a different type of breed of deer stalker, because I would say that he's quite into all of his new technology, and he's into the latest kit and whatnot, which is great because it publicizes it, and he's not afraid to show you it and tell people about it. And again, he's actually using one of my ex knives. He brought one of my knives that I used off of me. So he's using that, and I'm like, keep using it, mate. And he again, tried and tested kit that he's using. Last but not least is Alan Barrell. He came to me when I needed him the most. I got myself in a little predicament that the police took my rifles away, A, B, and C. I got them back very quickly, and he was my rock. He helped me when I needed him the most. I've been over to Ireland stalking with him. 70-year-old man, still dragging Sika like he's a yeah. And I admire him. When I'm 70, I hope I'm like him. I really do. I really hope I'm like him. If you spent 1 hour with him, you would become either extremely bored or you would become infatuated with deer because of how he speaks about them. Yeah. He's got this different way. He talks about deer in a different manner. And if you're not on that level, then you would find it kind of boring. But people that are really into deer stalking and passionate about deer stalking, you spend any little bit of company with him and you can't help but just get engrossed in him. We sat one night, our power went out, the little power we had while we were living off grid. We sat there in our underpants with our kit drying over the little log burner in the dark, drinking slow gin. And he was just talking to me about Pierre David's deer. And I was like, I've never even seen one. And he was like, oh, they're beautiful animals. And he talked to me about these deer for 45 minutes. I had no idea the extensive knowledge that this man had.
He's got of those deer, exactly. Yeah.
And then he would go, in the 70s, we were doing this. And I was like, oh, my God, I wasn't even born. I was not even born in the 70s. And it's just so refreshing that people like him are still like that at that age. Some people are in care homes.
And he's still out doing it. Exactly.
And he said to me, he said, this Ireland trip, I have never hunted so hard. He said, and it's done nothing but driven me to do more. He says, because there's going to come a time that I'm not going to be able to do it. He said, he's very open about that. He's like, I'm a 70-year-old man, and it won't be long, and I won't be able to extract deer off of anything. And people like that. If you've got a friend like that, or someone like that, go and make sure that you help them still stalk, still go out. If once upon a time they were on your permission and you've now got it, go and take him out, because believe you me, the stories that you will hear, you'll either really dislike or you will fall in love with.
No, absolutely. I can completely agree with you on that. We sadly lost our old boy up here. He was 84, but literally the week before we lost him, he was still out on the pheasant field putting pheasant nets on and out stalking, and there was nothing you could stop him with. And I think the only problem was it was a trip to hospital. That's what finished him. Otherwise, he'd still be here today doing it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That is fantastic. So I suppose that leads me on to what is the future?
Yeah, go on.
What is the future of me? So Stalking show is already paid for. So I will be at the Stalking show this year. I'm a big advocate for the NGO. One, because they came to me when I needed them the most. Two, I think deer stalkers are being left alone, aren't they, in the grand scheme of things?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think at the moment the gamekeepers are having a bit of a hard time with the amount of pheasants that they're rearing, the avian bird flu, COVID, shutting down shoots, A, B, and C, living crisis, all that kind of stuff. But I think at the moment there's a little bit of a shift that the gamekeepers are now starting to take a bit of the heat of what maybe like the foxhound type people have taken for many years. And I think they need our help the most. I think that even if you're not a gamekeeper, even if you're just a deer stalker, if you're a fisherman, if these boys at the moment are taking the brunt for all of us. And I think they're under massive scrutiny, because if they do anything wrong, their FACs or their shotguns are taken away straight away. So they need, in my eyes, protecting the most at the moment, I believe. So I'm a massive NGO fan. So please go and support the NGO. It's a 45 quid membership. You know, that's absolutely not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. And support them. So I will be at the Stalking show this year, and I'm going to build a knife for the NGO that will have pewter badges of salmon and a roebuck, a woodcock, and a pheasant, or something like that. That just came to me. Yeah. And it will be auctioned off. I'm going to ask them to make sure that they get like 100 tickets or something over the. And we put it a tenner a ticket or something like that, and all money is to go into the NGO. I don't want it. I don't want the money. I want them to have a little bit of comebacks on that. So I will be at the Stalking show. I'm going to take a huge amount of knives this year. I'm going to prep better. I'm going to definitely have a lot more skinning knives. I cannot believe how many skinning knives I should have sold. I should have sold 100 skinning knives. I couldn't believe it. I took 3. I couldn't believe it. I took 1 naked knife. That's it. Yeah. This year, I'm going to take 100. I'm going to give discounts to anybody that goes there. I'm going to drop my prices to make sure that people get what they want at the day to support the stalking community. I do really mean that. Inside Richie Nankz Knivez, I'm going to, and I say this really loosely because I'm really scared of what it might do. I'm going to start opening up where you can come and build your own knife with me. Okay. I don't want it to turn into 5 days of hell. No. Because it doesn't need to be. It will be fairly basic to start with. It will be stainless steel only, because we can do that quicker than Damascus. But you can come to me. I'm not going to charge a lot of money. I'm not going to rip blokes off or anything like that. But I am going to give them the opportunity to go away, build their own knife with me. It'll have my parameters set to it, so it will go out as if it was one of my knives. Yeah. But they would have built it, and it'll have a different tag on it, and it'll be their own type of tag with my emblem next to it.
Oh, magic! That's good. Yeah.
I just think, I've been asked a couple times and I've shied away from it, but I do think that there's this primitive skill that men kind of need, and it's maybe swinging a hammer or working a grinder is exactly what it is.
No, absolutely. I think that's quite a nice one to. Because they've got your skill set there. They've built their own knife, and actually they can go, I've done this. They go home, and it does make it that little bit more personal as well, doesn't it?
I'm just a bit afraid that I then build 100 more knife makers. That's
possibly, but there's still always the art of. I don't think you will, because I think what you end up with is anybody could have watched Forged in Fire or anything like that, but they've got the reassurance that you're there. They've seen what goes through it. They're not going to probably want to make another one.
No. Yeah, most probably.
That's what it'll be. But
yeah. So the other thing is also I've got my own clothing line started. I found a company that make a really, really good lightweight. I found a lightweight stalking jacket at the moment, hat, hoodie, a snood, sorry. It's got my emblem on it, and I'm selling them at cost.
Right.
It's a text message is all I have to send.
Yeah.
I don't need to earn money out of a text message and earn 80 quid a jacket. I don't need to do that. And I want to see people wearing my kit. The stalking jacket that I have found, I have tested. It is waterproof to a certain degree. It's not 100%. It's breathable in the summer. It's wind resistant, which is really, really good. And now, guess what? It's fairly cheap. And I was like, do you know what? Mine has got blood all the way up the sleeves, and it's not a great deal. I got Kuyu kit, which I wear, which I am afraid my life to wreck, but I am trying. I haven't found a winter jacket yet, but when I do, that will be the next thing.
Fantastic. And
the last thing is I've got to shoot a Chinese water deer this year because it's the only thing I haven't shot.
That's exactly the same as me, but there's a possibility I'm heading down to Norfolk maybe at some point. I may have one lined up down there, but it's finding time to get down there.
So I'm going to go with a knife maker. No, sorry, a lad that brought a knife off me. A funny story actually. I sent him his knife. He rung me and said, "Richie, I haven't received this knife yet." I went, "Okay, buddy, let me just go and check with the postal service." And they went, "Yeah, we've got a picture," and it said, "It's by the recycling." So my knife that I sent him that he paid for went out for the recycling.
Oh no.
So he was like, "You're joking me." I said, "Take that slip and we'll claim on the insurance." He said, "I've lost it." I said, "Well, I've got a photocopy of it here. I've taken a screenshot."
Yeah.
Because there was a signature on it, and because they said we have delivered it and you haven't been bothered about where it's been put in the past, there's not really an argument. So I said, "Look, I'll make you another one for free." And he went, "Well, you come and shoot a Chinese water deer with me."
Perfect.
And I went, "That's a deal, mate." So Chinese water deer for me this November, December, January sometime. And that's my 6 species shot. And to be honest, I don't say this to upset any Chinese water deer avids, but there's not a real big draw to them for me. Not really.
No, it's the teddy bear in the field. I think they're meant to be impressive to see, but I don't think it's. I think the stalk is not going to be something like you'll remember from the Sika or running up the hill to chase a red or a roebuck at the sort of the iconic picture of a roebuck standing in a park kind of thing.
Do they rut like other deer?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't really know their activity. I know they group around in big herds, and when they go, that's it. They're like 4 postcodes away because normally the nature is they're being chased by a tiger or something like that. So they're just gone.
For me, exactly. I think I'm just going to go and shoot a male, half decent male that I can put on my wall and say that's a Chinese water deer. And
there you go. It just ticks the box, doesn't it? Yeah.
The box and come back to sunny Cornwall and go back out on the reds.
Fantastic. Well, I think actually that's probably the best place for us to bring this to a close. Thank you very much. It's been fantastic. We've had plenty going on, and it's been a good evening. Somebody just popped in the door.
Yeah, I did tell you, didn't I? I can talk.
No, but that's exactly what it's all about. So we'll call it there. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me. And to all the boys listening, make sure you subscribe to Peter and look after him because he's doing some good things for our industry. Don't ever forget that. And good for you, mate, for putting us on that platform, mate.
That's all right. We'll keep it going.
No, thank you, mate. See you later. Stay safe.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it with Richie. Very interesting character and some great things going on. If you haven't had a chance, go check out his knives. Go check him out on Instagram. That's Richie Nankz Knivez, and see what he's up to. We've got some more guests lined up and more podcasts have been recorded. I'm also going to carry on. I think we had some questionnaires on Instagram. I will get those recorded down as soon as I can and bring those to you as well. Anyway, enough rambling now. We're up to 2 hours 20. We will let you crack on and hopefully listen to the next one.